is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello, welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Jamie Owen. Our top stories. The first woman aboard the Tiangong space station as China's spacecraft successfully docks for 6 months in space. The killing of British Member of Parliament David Amos. Police say there is a potential link to Islamic extremism. No jab, no job. Italy makes COVID health passes mandatory for all workers, the first European country to do so. And it could be one of the world's great railway journeys, building the link between Budapest and Belgrade. 3 Chinese astronauts are beginning a 6-month journey in space on board China's new space station. It follows the successful launch of the Shenzhou rocket. Among the 3 astronauts is Wang Yaoping, the first woman to work on the space station. Sun Ye reports.
Shenzhou 13 crew has arrived and settled in their home in space, officially starting a 6-month and the longest day ever planned for Chinese taikonauts. Barely 7 hours since the crew's launch from Jiuquan Satellite Center in northwestern China's Gansu. After midnight Saturday, they already set one record, as Shenzhou 13 docked with the Tianhe core module by executing a radio rendezvous for the first time.
Rendezvous and docking from a radial direction is risky. That's why particularly had Shenzhou 12 tested out the process before it left. Shenzhou 13's docking is great in every way, completely in alignment with our design.
And the mission is now gearing up for more challenges with the longer stay in space.
The mission will have 3 people for a 180-day stay. It's challenging for taikonauts and spacecrafts, including the manned spaceship. The long period of time gives uncertainties. For one, the longer you stay out, the more external influences and impacts you will meet. There are also internal effects from time. While we have fully tested out on the ground, you can also say you have really done this when you complete it in space. I think of it as a long battle.
It will be an intense 6 months for the taikonauts too. Their itinerary includes spacewalks, verification of key technology, installation of new equipment, scientific experiments, and some remote teaching, all from some 400 kilometers above Earth. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Zhang Fang is Associate Professor of Astronomy at Beijing Normal University. He explained the technical challenges of the docking procedure and the length of time the astronauts will spend in space.
If you think of the core module like a long stick, then in all the previous missions, including Shenzhou 12, the docking is either happens on the head-on position or the tail-on position. So if you can imagine that hitting it this way, the whole thing is not going to tumble like that. But this time, the crew module is hitting it this way, so so the control is a lot more difficult. In fact, one of the older cargo ships got kept around to provide counterweight in this direction, and also the station is moving this way, so the crew module is actually at a slightly different height to the station, so it's on a different orbit. So the natural tendency, if you don't do anything, the two will drift apart. So this is a lot more complicated maneuver. This is the first time that's been attempted, and the reason why it needs to happen is because for follow-on missions, when the really heavy LED modules get attached during the construction phase, it has to attach this way. So the crew module has to make way, leave open the dock in this direction. From an economic point of view, you want people to stay up there for as long as possible, so you don't have to keep launching expensive rockets to replace the crew. But on the other hand, if you stay for too long in space, you suffer health problems. For example, the radiation level up there is higher, and also the zero gravity means your bone mass get lost, and then your heart muscle weakens. So 6 months is kind of the average duration for an expedition to the International Space Station. So it's sort of an internationally recognized safe compromise.
NASA has launched a groundbreaking 12-year mission to explore ancient asteroids near the planet Jupiter. The Lucy mission will gather information about the formation of our solar system, undertaking the longest ever journey by a solar-powered spacecraft. It'll also be the first probe to return to Earth's orbit from the outer solar system, using the Earth's gravity to swing back to Jupiter for a second time in 2030. UK police are treating the killing of a member of Parliament as a terrorist incident. Sir David Amess was fatally stabbed on Friday as he met his constituents. Well, our correspondent Andrew Wilson is following the story. Andrew, what's the latest on the police investigation?
Well, the significant move forward, Jamie, is that the counter-terrorism police are now running this operation, and they've taken over from Essex Police and from a special operations group in Essex as well. That gives the investigation a national element and also throws at it many more resources at the disposal of detectives looking for answers to this extraordinary attack yesterday at lunchtime. They'll be able to get access to more databases, have more officers investigating. We understand at the moment they've confirmed a 25-year-old man is being held in custody. No one else is being looked for or sought by police at this point in the investigation. 2 properties have been searched in London, but clearly this is the direction of travel, this link with some sort of terrorism connection, which they'll be following up now with all the resources at their disposal. For the political sphere, it's been a day of tributes and a day of mourning, starting this morning with a visit by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to the crime scene to pay their respects. Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer paid tribute together to a man murdered suddenly while doing the job he loved most, serving the people he was elected to represent. The Home Secretary and Speaker of the House of Commons followed on. These gestures aren't simply ceremonial, the feelings are genuine. All of Westminster and the country is profoundly shocked by this attack.
David was a man who believed passionately in this country and in its future, and we've lost today a fine public servant and a much-loved friend and colleague, and our thoughts are very much today with his wife, his children and his family.
Trying to make sense of what occurred here today.
Tributes from the political sphere were echoed by residents who gathered in nearby churches and laid flowers at the scene to pay their respects.
You know, when my son didn't know what to do and how to go forward, he went to David and David helped him get into the police.
Shock, utter disbelief. For a gentleman like Sir David, he's been a personal friend to me for 18 years now, since I've been in this area as a pharmacist, and he's always been here for not only myself but for the whole constituency.
Sir David was an experienced and popular MP, but he had also commented recently on the increasing vulnerability of parliamentarians. The accessibility of MPs is a cornerstone of British political life, and while it's acknowledged that threats and harassment are a feature of the modern world, it's unlikely to deter the vast majority from continuing to hold such surgeries. But this will focus minds.
We will carry on. We live in an open society, democracy. We cannot be cowed by any individual or any motivation, people with motives, to stop us from functioning, to serve our elected democracy. So on that basis, we have measures in place. We'll continue to review and strengthen measures, and rightly so.
Counter-terrorism police are now running the investigation, and Sir David's death has been declared a terrorism incident. A 25-year-old British national of Somali heritage remains in custody, and detectives say they are not seeking anyone else at this stage. Well, you heard the Home Secretary there, Jamie. Everyone's picking their words quite carefully yet because they don't know the result of the counter-terrorism police investigation into this incident and what the eventual conclusions will be. But safety of MPs has always been a concern, and never more so than in the last decade or so. Social media, the internet, all MPs report an uptick in harassment, death threats, other sort of what they call nuisance events, and it does put them on edge. It's rare to have real attacks of this nature on MPs. Joe Cox was killed in 2016, another attack in 2010, and a third one back in 2000. But the accessibility of MPs is the cornerstone of how this country's political system works. And you heard the Home Secretary there. She's not going to commit to any kind of review that's going to limit, ultimately, MPs' chances to be available to their constituents. That's something that is reportedly and vastly popular within the House of Commons still to this day. And so it presents a dilemma. The police are on their toes, making sure that they're there to suggest anything they can to help MPs. But I think the MP's traditional surgery where they meet constituents is not going away.
Andrew Wilson, thank you very much. Angela Merkel is in Turkey for what's likely to be her last visit as German Chancellor. She's met President Erdogan in Istanbul. With migration from Afghanistan high on their agenda, Merkel has played a pivotal role in managing the EU's sometimes troubled relationship with Turkey over her 16 years in office. CGTN's Mikhail Bar-David reports.
The two leaders have different approaches to leadership, but they have managed to cooperate over the years despite their differences. During the meeting, Merkel and Erdogan discussed regional conflicts such as Syria, Libya and Afghanistan. In his speech, Erdogan applauded Merkel for being brave regarding her approach to Syrian refugees. Tension in the Eastern Mediterranean was also among topics discussed. The two leaders also gave their views on arrested journalists in Turkey.
We have had very different views on some of them, especially when it comes to describing a case as terrorism. But altogether, I think these talks have paid off.
The judiciary is independent in every country, including Turkey. We stand for judicial independence. As a president, it is out of the question for me to intervene in a judicial decision that is made or that will be made, as long as we all believe the judiciary is fair.
In his statement, Erdogan also said he opposed coalition governments. However, regarding the future of German-Turkish ties, he stated that he looked forward to working with the new government and that Turkey aimed to increase bilateral trade to $50 billion. I'm Mikhail Bar-David for CGTN in Istanbul.
A 4.6 magnitude earthquake has been recorded on the Spanish Canary island of La Palma, the strongest since a volcano began erupting there nearly a month ago. The quakes are intensifying what scientists have called a lava tsunami, huge rivers of molten rock. Over 7,000 people have now been moved to safety and thousands of buildings destroyed since the volcano first erupted on the 19th of September. A 3.5-metre high puppet depicting a Syrian child has arrived in Paris, known as Little Amal. It's being toured around Europe to promote awareness of the plight of refugee children. Amal has already been to Greece, Italy and Switzerland and will end her journey in the UK city of Manchester. Daily COVID deaths in Russia have exceeded 1,000 for the first time. The latest data also shows more than 33,000 new infections in the last 24 hours. It's the third day in a row the country has surpassed previous records for both fatalities and cases. Italy has made COVID health passes mandatory for all public and private sector workers, the first European country to do so. The so-called Green Pass identifies a person's vaccination status, whether they have tested negative or have recently recovered from the virus. Hermione Kitson reports.
It's a new era for Italy where no Green Pass means no work. Sergio Bengrazi manages the country's biggest traditional Chinese medicine clinic and says while some may find the measure extreme, he believes it's essential.
Green Pass should be a great solution for countries like Italy. We're confident that this could help.
From the 15th of October, all workers in the public and private sector must be in possession of the pass, which proves vaccination, recent recovery or a negative test result within 48 hours.
It will help, above all, in making workplaces safer, because employees have the right to go to work without doubt or fear of being infected.
Workers without the Green Pass will have their pay suspended, but not their position. The responsibility of enforcement rests with the employer, and there are hefty fines for non-compliance.
As board of any company, we have important responsibility, but each worker each person in Italy has his own responsibility to face.
This responsibility becoming mandatory has angered many workers who say it's unconstitutional, and protests have broken out across the country.
Clearly, the aggression and violence must be condemned, and we must keep in mind that it is a minority of workers in this no Green Pass category.
There's concern that the majority of those likely to refuse the pass will be essential workers who could throw the country's transport and logistics sector into chaos. There are currently 3.5 million Italian workers still unvaccinated, and each of them will have to get tested every 48 hours, which means more than 1 million tests will be required every week. But health authorities are sure the necessary test supplies are available, and they're calling on other countries to follow suit.
And now other European countries should do more to protect their workers.
The new rules will be in effect until at least the end of December, when the country's state of emergency will be reviewed. Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Rome.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead here on The World Today, it'll be one of the world's great railway journeys. Work begins on the Hungarian side of the Budapest to Belgrade link.
This week, Razor speaks to leading scientists and UN officials about an ambitious new plan to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030.
Well, I refer to this next decade as the last chance decade for both biodiversity and climate. And the two are entirely interlinked. We have to address the climate crisis if we are to conserve life on Earth, and biodiversity ecosystem management is a core part of addressing the climate crisis.
Zero emissions on the road. But what happens when an electric vehicle runs out of charge? The move from combustion engines to electric is accelerating. Rising fuel prices and growing awareness of the climate emergency are driving the change. If the future is electric, are city roadways ready? Is battery technology really greener? And how can car makers put the brakes on costs? Plug in to our EV special series, only on CGTN.
Climate change is happening right now. World leaders prepare for vital talks that will change the course of humanity. Action could save millions of lives. Failure could cost many more. Do they have the will to act quickly? Does the planet have the time to wait? Follow full coverage from the COP26 climate talks here on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The first woman aboard the Tiangong space station as China's spacecraft successfully docks for 6 months in space. The killing of the British Member of Parliament David Amess. The police say there is a potential link to Islamic extremism. And no jab, no job. Italy makes COVID health passes mandatory for all workers, the first European country to do so. Work has begun on the Hungarian side of the Budapest to Belgrade railway. It's Europe's first major project as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, with an aim to ultimately connect Hungary to the Greek port of Piraeus. Penelope Lietch reports.
Cutting ties with old infrastructure, construction can now begin on the Hungarian side of the Budapest to Belgrade railway. It's a small step in Europe's first major project being built through China's Belt and Road Initiative.
Now it takes 8 hours to get from Budapest to Belgrade by train. But if this project is completed, it will take 3.5 hours. This is a very competitive time. It will take longer by road. It will be the most modern rail route from Budapest to the capitals of the neighboring countries.
The railway is being upgraded in sections to create a direct 350-kilometre route between the Hungarian and Serbian capitals, connecting to the Greek shipping port of Piraeus. The Hungarian government say it will monetise Hungary's geographical position by drawing cargo traffic from China to send on to the EU.
In the Mediterranean Sea, the Piraeus port is the only deep sea port. That's why most of the Chinese goods are going to come to that point, but we need to bring them to Europe. So that's why this will be the quickest and actually the most convenient way.
The route is expected to make Hungary a logistical hub and increase investment in cargo transport across the country. The Budapest to Belgrade Railway is the second most expensive infrastructure project in Hungary's history. Last year, the government signed a Chinese loan worth more than $2 billion to set the wheels in motion. While nearby Montenegro has approached the EU for help to pay back a $1 billion highway funded through the Belt and Road Initiative, Hungarian officials are confident their loan can be repaid.
The Hungarian government doesn't make decisions which would negatively impact our future. This is not as big loan as it seems, actually, if you compare it to the Hungarian economy.
Construction of Serbia's section of the railway began in 2018. The route is expected to be operational by 2025. Penelope Lias, CGTN, Kiskunhalos.
The Pentagon has promised payments and U.S. relocation to relatives of 10 civilians mistakenly killed in a drone attack in Kabul. The strike killed an Afghan aid worker and his family, including 7 children, just days before the U.S. troop withdrawal in August. The U.S. has called it a tragic mistake and says it was targeting an Islamic State suicide bomber. Southeast Asian countries have excluded Myanmar's military ruler from attending a summit this month. The ASEAN grouping has instead asked Myanmar to send a non-political representative to their meeting in Brunei. 24 hippos roaming the former ranch of the late Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar have been sterilized. Escobar had illegally imported exotic animals before he was shot dead by the police in 1993. Their numbers have since multiplied. Ride-hailing apps have revolutionized taxi services all around the world. In Africa, similar technology is being used in agriculture, making it easier for farmers to hire equipment and operators. Nick Mudima reports now on what's being dubbed the Uber for tractors.
For many African farmers, owning a tractor is nothing more than a dream. The world's least mechanized continent, farming equipment is unaffordable for most because of low income and a lack of financing. Without machines, production is roughly half the average for the developing world, with farmers unable to grow their businesses. But in some parts of Africa, this is slowly changing thanks to a mobile phone app. It's ride-hailing, but for farmers, Hello Tractor allows them to hire equipment and operators at the touch of a button.
I feed my kids through this farm. I school them through this farm. I feed my cows with Napier grass, all courtesy of this garden. The tractor innovation and technology is very cheap. It's also tiresome to do all this manually, like bush clearing, and the tractor makes the work very easy.
For farmers here in Kenya's Kisii County, this innovation has helped cut production costs while boosting yields. Almost 2/3 of African farmers depend on labor-intensive agriculture, which is time-consuming and doesn't guarantee a successful harvest. But the app has been a game-changer for many of them. As well as helping farmers, the app makes owning a tractor more profitable as the equipment doesn't lie idle.
Hello Tractor has really boosted our economic state in this area. Farmers here harvest quality food, which helps them in so many ways.
The app also tracks the movement of tractors, monitors fuel consumption and maintenance, and allows owners to see who is operating the equipment.
A typical farmer who receives tractor services through us plants 40 times faster than manual labor and at 1/3 the cost. Now, keep in mind, these are mostly rain-fed agricultural systems. So what that means is establishing your crop on time is mission critical for the grower. So being able to get your land prepared, get your crop established before the rain comes will determine the outcome of your season. And so having access to a tractor allows you to do that so you can earn more money come harvest time.
The startup began in Nigeria in 2014 and now operates in 13 African countries, as well as 3 in Asia. 3,000 tractor owners have used the platform to service over 500,000 farmers.
The role of innovation in this area has changed the lives of so many farmers. Through the fertile soils and availability of tractors, the farmers are now able to realize so many profits from the markets. Right now, the main intention is to increase the acreage and, of course, the number of tractors in this area. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Kisii County, Kenya.
The COP15 Biodiversity Summit has come to an end in China with a call for international collaboration to avoid the extinction of species. Kunming's Institute of Botany has a partnership with the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh that stretches back more than 100 years. We've been hearing from some of those involved.
And each time I see that collection, it's wonderful to see this small microcosm of the wonder of the flora of China present in this botanic garden in Edinburgh in Scotland.
There are much more species here in China, particularly in the area in northwestern Yunnan, Sichuan, and Tibet. So these trees can serve as a germplasm and sources for the pathogen-resistant relative species. You know, the naming of the plants is really important, but without the flower and the fruits, sometimes we may make mistakes. But now we can use DNA barcoding technology together for the identification.
And finally, millions of people have tuned in this week for an inaugural World Cup in Spain to see who would be crowned international balloon champion. The rules are very simple. Don't let the balloon touch the floor. The headlines again. The first woman aboard the Tiangong space station as China's spacecraft successfully docks for 6 months in space. The killing of the British Member of Parliament, David Amos, the police say there is a potential link to Islamic extremism. And no jab, no job. Italy makes COVID health passes mandatory for all workers, the first European country to do so. And that's it for The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app. And in the UK on Freeview. More news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, Stephen Cole on the revolution in British universities in the agenda. But from me, goodbye.